Hello everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Talking News during Volunteers Week. Volunteers Week is a national celebration of the incredible people who give their time, skills, energy and kindness to support others. Here at Sight for White, our volunteers are at the very heart of everything that we do. Whether they're recording Talking News, delivering audio memory sticks, providing transport, supporting events, helping with fundraising, befriending members, sighted guiding, assisting in our office or simply offering a friendly face and a listening ear, their contribution makes a real difference every single day. This year is particularly special as we celebrate not only our volunteers, but also the thousands of interactions they help make possible across the Isle of Wight. Their dedication helps people living with sight and hearing loss remain connected, informed, independent and part of their community. On behalf of our trustees, staff team, members and everyone connected with Sight for White, I would like to say a heartfelt thank you. Your generosity, compassion and commitment embody everything that makes our charity so special. To all of our volunteers, past and present, thank you for helping us create a more inclusive Isle of Wight. We truly could not do it without you. Happy Volunteers Week, everyone, and thank you for listening. Take care.
Here is this week's charity news on the 8th of June 2026. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15 p.m. and 2 p.m. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
Tandem biking is now on a Tuesday along the Cows cycle track. If you would like a go on a tandem, please do not hesitate to call the office and we can arrange a suitable time.
Yoga will now restart in September at Millbrook House at 2 p.m. If you would like to join the group, please call the office and ask for more details.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday starting at 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any and to demonstrate equipment.
We have Dave from Synaptic joining us for our coffee and chat morning on Wednesday the 22nd of July from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Following this is a message from Dave about who Synaptic support and what they will be bringing along with them. Here at Synaptic, our mission is to design easy-to-use products that ensure people with sight loss have access to mainstream mobile technology, regardless of their previous experience or ability. We pride ourselves on our unique understanding of the needs of people with sight loss and the challenges that they can face when assessing technology. Customer-led design is at the heart of what we do. This is reflected in our award-winning and innovative products, which are designed to open up access to the latest technology in a way that is easy and intuitive to use. We have easy-to-use phones, tablets, smartwatches and accessories, whatever your level of sight loss.
Mix and Mingle is on Thursday at Millbrook House. This group enjoys crafts, quizzes and entertainment. If you would like to put your name down on the list, please call the office.
We have trips on the Spirit of Scott Bader available. This is a catamaran and will sail from East Cowes for half a day or full day sailing in the Solent. For more information, please call the office.
Wet Wheels has once again invited us to go out on their vessel for an exciting ride out on the Solent. The cost is £10 for around 1 hour and 45-minute journey from Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club. The date is July 23rd. Please call the office if you wish to go.
We apologise for the mistake in last week's Society News regarding the next walk and talk. The date and place were incorrect. The proper date for the next walk and talk is Friday the 12th of June. The walk will be between New Church and the Sandown Golf Club. This is a gentle walk and will finish with tea and cake. If you would like to join this group or to find out more, please call the office to put your name down on the list by Tuesday the 9th of June so we can finalise the numbers with the golf club.
We have been invited to the Royal Victoria Yacht Club's Disabilities Sailing Day on July 18 between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Spaces are limited, and if oversubscribed, a ballot will be held. Please call the office if you're interested and would like more details.
Sainsbury's Newport has changed their shop layout following major refurbishment. If anyone would like to book a route familiarisation session with Emma, our trainee mobility officer, please call the office and she will be able to book you in a time.
We are busy planning our Christmas in July event on the 4th of July. We are appealing for good bric-a-brac, tombola prizes, jigsaws, books, raffle prizes and any Christmas decorations. If you have any donations, please drop off at Millbrook House, or if you can't, please call the office and we can arrange collection.
This is an urgent appeal to anyone who may know that could drive our minibus. We are in desperate need for volunteers to drive it, especially on a Thursday afternoon. If you have a neighbour, a friend, a relation who may be interested, please ask them to call the office and speak to Susan.
Our next Ion Social is going to be on Wednesday the 17th of June. This will be at the Aviation Museum in Sandown. The visit is booked for 1 p.m. to 2 p.m, where we have exclusive access to the museum for the hour. If you are interested in joining us for the afternoon, please call the office to add your name to the list.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. East White MP seeking future funding support for Sandown regeneration. Efforts are underway by East White MP Joe Robertson to secure future place-based funding opportunities for Sandown, following a visit by representatives from the Lloyds Bank Foundation. The visit, organised by the MP, brought together local businesses, councillors and community leaders at the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary to discuss some of the town's long-standing social and economic challenges. Topics raised during the meeting included dereliction, deprivation and limited opportunities for young people in the Bay Area. The Lloyds Bank Foundation, an independent charity established by Lloyds Bank, has previously been involved in supporting areas benefiting from the government's Pride in Place funding programme. The organisation is now exploring opportunities to extend similar place-based support to up to 100 towns across England that are not currently part of formal Pride in Place funding schemes. Mr. Robertson said he had approached the foundation earlier this year to make the case for Sandown. leading to last week's visit. Joe Robertson, MP for East White, has said, "I was pleased to bring Danielle from the Lloyds Bank Foundation to Sandown to introduce her to the local leaders like Lawrence Bates from the Bay Business Association, Alex Rennie, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and Ian Boyd from the Common Space, and to show her round the Bay area." The Foundation have a strong background in working with left-behind towns with strong local leadership. So that is why I wanted to make some personal introductions with people who could one day form part of a neighbourhood board. Sandown is too often left behind when it comes to national support, which is first and foremost about money, but it's also about time, tools and connections. Mr. Robertson added that while Ryde is set to benefit from £20 million of government funding announced in October 2023, Sandown also faces significant challenges which he believes should attract additional support. Mayor of Sandown, Alex Lightfoot, has said, "My thanks to Joe for arranging the meeting. We had a wide range of stakeholders, including our new Isle of Wight councillors. There was a lot of consensus around the room on the issues Sandown is facing and a need to make sure we are ready for any opportunities that arise. Joe's focus on Sandown as an area in particular need of additional help is very much appreciated." Joe Robertson is expected to develop a formal proposal ahead of a follow-up meeting planned for later this summer.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Bembridge residents opposed planned Southern Water overflow pipe on beach. A group of Bembridge residents is campaigning against Southern Water's plans to install an overflow pipe on Silver Sands Beach, arguing it could have environmental and public health impact. The proposed pipe would form part of the wastewater network and, according to Southern Water, is intended to help prevent flooding of nearby homes during periods of extreme weather. Local campaigners claim the overflow could discharge untreated wastewater onto the beach and have raised concerns about potential effects on water quality, tourism, and the surrounding marine environment. Residents have formed a campaign group called No Poo at the Point and launched a petition opposing the plans. Organisers say the petition attracted more than 200 signatures within its first day. Among those objecting is Plastic Free Bembridge, which has submitted concerns to Southern Water, the Environment Agency, the Marine Management Organisation, and the Isle of Wight Council. Campaigners have also highlighted the area's status as a marine conservation zone, with concerns raised about potential impacts on seagrass meadows and other protected habitats off the Bembridge coast. Local resident David Hunt said he had never known the pipe to be operational during his time living in the village and questioned the need for the scheme. Andrew Holman of Harbour Farm Nature Group described the proposals as concerning given the environmental importance of the area. Bembridge Parish Council has voted to support objections to the plans and has agreed to raise concerns about what it says was a lack of public consultation. Isle of Wight councillor Mark Rochelle said he has been in discussions with Southern Water Chief Executive Lawrence Gosden about arranging a meeting with Isle of Wight councillors and potentially a public meeting to discuss the proposals. Isle of Wight East MP Joe Robertson said he shares concerns about sewage discharges into coastal waters and believes action should be taken to protect them for future generations. Southern Water has said the scheme is designed to reduce the risk of flooding to local properties during severe weather events. The company has also indicated that wider improvements to local wastewater infrastructure are planned from 2028. Work that had been expected to begin in May was delayed following legal representations made on behalf of local residents. Campaigners say they understand construction is now due to start on the 8th of June. The company has not yet publicly responded to the latest concerns raised by campaigners.
New Isle of Wight Police Area Commander takes charge from the Island Echo, read by Lee. The Isle of Wight has welcomed a new area commander following the retirement of Superintendent Rob Mitchell after 30 years of police service. Superintendent Marcus Cater took on the mantle of area commander for the island in April 2026. His first public appearance in the role was at Area Commanders Awards at Newport Congregational Church, where officers, police staff and members of the public were recognised for their dedication and service. Superintendent Cater has served for 26 years with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, working across the county and focusing on delivering exceptional local policing that meets the needs of victims. Speaking on his new role, Superintendent Cater has said, "Having been born on the Isle of Wight, I have a real appreciation and awareness of the unique characteristics and challenges that arise when it comes to policing in this area. Over my first few weeks in the role, I have been really pleased to see how effectively different services across the island work together to protect vulnerable people within our communities, support victims of crime and ensure the island remains a safe and enjoyable place in which to live, visit and work. The benefit of strong partnerships supporting local communities was demonstrated recently when Isle of Wight Magistrates Court was presented with evidence of a drug-related antisocial behaviour and criminal activity at Nippert Court and at 2 addresses on West Street, which led to the granting of a partial closure order at these addresses. The order was obtained following partnership work with officers from West Wight Neighbourhood Policing Team and housing providers Southern Housing and Vectors Housing. Superintendent Cater added, "Policing plays a critical role in keeping our communities safe and secure for residents and those who come to visit this wonderful place we are fortunate enough to call our home. I am looking forward to spending time out and about, shadowing my teams across our different districts, observing the fantastic work they are doing across our towns and rural areas. If you see me out and about in your area, then please do come and say hello."
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Youth Trust calls for business partnerships to tackle youth unemployment. The Isle of Wight Youth Trust is inviting local businesses to play a positive role in supporting young people into employment. Following the government's latest review examining the reasons for the increase in the number of young people currently not in education, employment or training, recent national figures show that over 1 million young people aged 16 to 24, 13.5%, are not in education, employment or training, NEET, the highest level seen since 2013. On the Isle of Wight, the latest available data indicates there are 710 young people aged 18 to 24 in this position, pointing to an opportunity for local support and engagement. For more than 2 years, the Isle of Wight Youth Trust has been working with young islanders, offering employability, training, mentoring, mental health support, and job-seeking guidance. This tailored local approach is achieving strong results, with participants progressing into positive outcomes at rates above national averages. Building on this success, the Trust is encouraging island employers to get involved and help create meaningful opportunities for young people, while also strengthening the future local workforce. Matt Hall, 16 to 25 Hub Lead, says, "Young people here have real potential. They just need the chance to prove it. By working together with local businesses, we can open doors, build confidence and create lasting benefits for our community." As part of its 5-year strategy, Healthy Minds, Thriving Futures, the Trust is inviting businesses of all sizes to contribute, whether through work placements, apprenticeships, mentoring or entry-level roles. By partnering with the Isle of Wight Youth Trust, employers can support the next generation, bring fresh talent into their organisations and make a positive difference across the island.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council requires John Giddings and Solo Music Agency join forces with University of Exeter to back groundbreaking Isle of Wight shark study. Scientists from the University of Exeter are set to begin what is believed to be the first ever study of thresher sharks in UK waters, focusing on the seas around the Isle of Wight. The project has been funded by Solo Music Agency, founded by the Isle of Wight Festival organiser and Exeter alumnus John Giddens. Researchers say sightings suggest thresher sharks are seasonal visitors to waters off the island. The species, which can grow up to 6 metres long, is known for using its distinctive tail to stun schools of fish. Despite increased sightings around the Isle of Wight in recent years, little is known about why the sharks visit the Northern English Channel. Scientists hope the research will provide new information about their movements, feeding behaviour and mating areas. John Giddens said, "Hopefully my donation will help the scientists find out more about their habitat and how to protect them and the oceans for the future. Being in a position to help my old university is a privilege. The university started my career, and to give something back is a great opportunity." Commenting on his fascination with sharks, he added, "I work in the music business. I see the real ones. But seriously, there's something magical and beautiful about them. Their shape, the way they move. I could watch them all day long." Dr. Lucy Hawkes from the University of Exeter said, "We think these waters could be a special place for thresher sharks. It's thought that thresher sharks migrate seasonally into shallow coastal waters, possibly to mate, suggesting that the Isle of Wight could be a pupping ground." Little is known about thresher sharks globally, and we don't have evidence on why they come to the Northern English Channel. Learning about their movements, feeding behaviour and mating areas could help us protect this amazing species. Researchers say intensive fishing has caused Atlantic thresher shark populations to decline rapidly, and the species is now considered to be in danger of extinction. If numbers around the UK are increasing, waters off the Isle of Wight could represent an important conservation hotspot. The project will involve the deployment of 2 electronic tags on thresher sharks in partnership with recreational anglers on the Isle of Wight. Francesco Garzon from the University of Exeter said, "The generous donation will fund an important pilot tagging study, hopefully laying the foundation for a larger scale project investigating these sharks in UK waters. We're incredibly grateful to John for believing in the project and this team. In partnership with expert recreational anglers on the Isle of Wight, we will deploy 2 high-tech electronic tags on thresher sharks. Anglers are the absolute experts on this rare species and have been keeping records of their appearances for years. It's thanks to them and their dedication to threshers that we can make this project happen. These tags will track the animals for a year before detaching and transmitting data back to us, at which point we will find out what the sharks have been up to since we tagged them.
Full-scale Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day event will not take place in 2026. From the Island Echo, read by Lee. Organisers of Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day have confirmed that the full-scale public event will not take place in 2026, citing a range of logistical, operational and funding challenges. The annual event has grown significantly over the past 3 years, bringing together serving personnel, reservists, cadets, veterans, armed forces families, support organisations and local partners. Organisers say work has been ongoing with agreed partners to deliver the 2026 event, but despite those efforts, it has not been possible to confirm a public event at the same standard achieved in recent years. A combination of factors has affected planning and deliverability, including logistics and event infrastructure, volunteer and operational manpower, Ministry of Defence funding timelines and approvals, and the cost and coordination of air displays. Safety, compliance and airspace requirements have also contributed to difficulties, alongside limited availability of visiting military assets and supporting units due to wider operational commitments. Organisers say the recent local election period also created practical challenges when coordinating partners, confirming key elements and communicating plans and sponsors. The event is organised by a small team of unpaid volunteers, with personal circumstances and welfare considerations also impacting capacity this year. In a statement, organisers said expectations for this event are rightly high and it is important to the whole island community. For these reasons, a reduced version of the event has not been pursued, as it would fall significantly short of what has previously been delivered. The organising team's priority is to protect the integrity of the event so that it can return in future at the quality and scale the community expects. Alternative options include a parade-led event where explored. However, organisers say 2 of the island's largest marching bands are committed to a national event in London on the same weekend, while key parade personnel are unavailable. Despite the cancellation of a large-scale event, Armed Forces Day will still be marked on the Isle of Wight in 2026 through an official civic flag raising and an address recognising serving personnel, reservists, cadets, veterans and armed forces families. Organisers say it remains their ambition for future events to once again include attractions such as the Red Arrows, parachute display teams, visiting military units and the Lancaster bomber, subject to availability following its refit. The organising team has thanked participants, sponsors, volunteers and residents for their continued support. Tributes have also been paid to Alec Penston, who attended Isle of Wight Forces Day on the 2 occasions and read at the 2024 event. Organisers said he will be fondly remembered.
Good morning. My name's Val. I'm reading today.
And your other reader, straight from Birmingham, is Tony.
The Country File to explore the island areas. The island is to feature in a hit BBC One TV show, Country File, on Sunday the 7th of June. In the episode titled Wonders of the Isle of Wight, presenters Joe Crowley, Margarita Taylor and Adam Henson will explore parts of the island few visitors see. The team will examine the island's unusual geology. They will also delve into the unusual marine life and distinct coastal environments rarely seen by tourists. and they will also look at crops that thrive in the island's warmer, sunny southerly climate. An episode synopsis reads, "Beyond the beaches and bustling holiday towns, the island's rare geology and southerly location have shaped a landscape rich in surprises, from unusual marine life and distinctive habitats to crops more often associated with warmer climates." An article from Memorable TV said, "Countryfile has covered the island before, but always anchored to the postcard version. This one promises to go deeper. Countryfile has filmed on the island on a number of occasions in the past. One episode featured Ryde Pier and Osborne House with Matt Baker and Ellie Harrison, while another in 2018 saw John Craven, Helen Skelton and Margarita Taylor visit. This latest episode airs at 6:15 on BBC One.
Boost for toilets and bus route. Ventnor's number 31 community bus service will continue, and public toilets in the town have been given a revamp, Mayor Steve Cooper has announced to residents. The councillor said the public transport contract had been renewed at the start of April, and that lavatories by the seafront and in the park have been redecorated in a public address at St Catherine's Church last Friday. He said there has quite rightly been some concern over the conditions of the restroom facilities which are managed by Ventnor Town Council, abbreviated VTC. Previously reported problems have included a leaking roof, vandalism, as well as unsightly and stained hand wash unit sinks. Mayor Cooper said, "We renewed the community bus service with the current contractor on April the 1st. The service has switched from Saturdays to Thursdays for sensible logistic reasons and requests. There has been some, quite rightly, concerns about the public toilets and their condition. They have a redecoration down on the seafront, and the toilets in the park have also been redecorated. The seafront toilets are soon to have a new urinal system and to become fully operational, and we will be taking some long-term decisions on what we're going to do with the roof."
A cyclist death linked to a crash. A cyclist died several months after suffering serious injuries in a crash on Ryde Esplanade. An inquest has concluded. Robert Holmes, a retired postman originally from Hammersmith in London, died at John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford on May the 29th, 2025. The 76-year-old's death followed a crash on December the 11th, 2024, in which he suffered a traumatic head injury while riding his bicycle on Ryde Esplanade. The collision, which also involved a Mercedes-Benz Varnio, happened outside the Ryde Super Bowl. A Section 9C written inquest, completed without a public hearing, concluded that Mr. Holmes, who lived in Ryde, turned in front of the vehicle, was struck and came off his bike. Following the incident, emergency services attended the scene, and Mr. Holmes was airlifted to Southampton University Hospital with serious head injuries. He was later transferred to St Mary's Hospital for continued care, before attending a rehabilitation centre in Oxford in April 25. However, his condition deteriorated and he was taken to the nearby John Radcliffe Hospital, where he died. The medical cause of death was recorded as aspiration pneumonia and traumatic hypoxic brain injury, with coroner Caroline Summeray concluding that Mr. Holmes' death was the result of a road traffic collision.
The Isle of Wight Council's adult social care has been rated requires improvement by national watchdog the Care Quality Commission, abbreviated CQC, missing out on a good rating by a single percentage point. The CQC inspection carried out in November 2025 scored the service at 62%, with 63% needed for an overall good rating. Inspectors praised the island's safeguarding arrangements, finding a good standard of safe systems, pathways and transitions, and highlighting an effective multi-agency safeguarding adults board. However, across 3 of the 4 main themes, assessing needs, supporting people to lead healthier lives, and equity in experience and outcomes, the Council scored 2 out of 4, indicating some shortfalls. The full report pointed to delays in assessments and reviews, inconsistent waiting well processes, and weaknesses in how people's identities and goals are recorded in care plans. It also notes that 522 annual reviews were overdue, and 530 people were waiting for an equipment assessment from the in-house occupational therapy service, with a median wait of 171 days and the longest wait stretching to 813 days. The CQC also highlighted 2 key strategies for autism and dementia as out of date or delayed. Speaking at a media briefing, Laura Gordian, the Council's Strategic Director for Adult Social Care and Housing Needs, admitted the requires improvement rating was not a surprise, but believed the service was on an upward trajectory. However, she did dispute the point raised about the dementia strategy. Ms. Gaudian said the strategy remained valid until March 2026, around 4 months after the inspection date. She said she believed the CQC had recognised this but left the issue in the final report anyway. She added that the revised dementia strategy is due to be signed off in July, and an updated autism strategy delayed since 2019 while the Council waited for national guidance is almost ready for approval. CQC inspectors also criticised gaps in the Council's data, including poor recording of protected characteristics such as sexuality, which makes it harder to spot inequalities in who is assessing support. One of the most contentious findings is that there is some over-reliance on residential care for people aged over 65, with a higher than average proportion of older islanders moving into residential care homes compared with England as a whole. The report links this to what it calls a risk-averse culture around hospital discharge, a tendency to opt for the safest, most cautious option, such as residential care, rather than supporting people at home. Ms. Gaudian said she fundamentally disagrees with the CQC on this point. She argued inspectors had not fully taken into account the island's particular circumstances, including the number of older residents living without close family nearby. She explained that many older people can manage most daily tasks but cannot safely live entirely alone and often face significant loneliness, and decisions to move into residential care were sometimes about quality of life rather than risk alone. Doing the right thing for people is more important to me than getting a higher report score, Ms. Gaudian said. The Council's improvement plan nonetheless includes commitments to, quote, strengthen prevention and early intervention, end quote, further grow re-enablement services, and work with National Health Service colleagues through an elite discharge task force. The CQC also flagged leadership issues, giving the Council a good score for learning, improvement and innovation, but only requires improvement for governance, management and sustainability. The Council is understood to have already begun work to address the concerns and replace its case management system described as not fit for purpose. A tender process for a replacement system is underway. The Council said the report gives us a clear picture of where we are doing well as where we need to go further, describing it as encouraging that the score was very close to good. It also stressed that the island service operates in one of the country's oldest local populations, with nearly a third of residents aged 65 or over. Councillor James Whelan, newly elected chair of the Adult Social Care, Public Health and Housing Needs Committee, said the picture was not as bad as he has expected when taking on the role. The Council will now work with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare National Health Service Foundation Trust, itself rated requires improvement for mental health services by the CQC on May 21st to improve support for people with mental health needs.
A man who shoved a cyclist off a seawall is back in court. A man who pushed a cyclist off a seawall because he thought it would be funny has appeared in court once again, this time for stealing alcohol from a Co-op store. Daniel Dickens of Avenue Road, Sandown, went before magistrates on Friday, May the 29th. The 39-year-old admitted stealing wine to the value of £11.90p from the Co-op on Sandown High Street on April the 14th. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said Dixons entered the Co-op and took 2 bottles of wine and put them in his backpack. He went to exit and was challenged by a member of staff, but refused to give the bottles back and left without paying. For Dixons, Oscar Vincent said the offence was captured on CCTV. Court heard that Dickens was also in court in February for shoplifting. He is also due to be sentenced in June after he admitted to pushing a woman off her bike in Sandown, an offence which occurred on August the 5th last year. The woman went over the seawall and onto the beach below, a fall of around 5 to 6 feet. The assault was unprovoked. For this latest shoplifting offence, magistrates ordered him to pay a fine and costs totalling £152.90.
Pollution alerts were issued by the Environmental Agency at Isle of Wight beaches this week due to sewage. The Environmental Agency advised people against bathing at Totland Bay, Colwell Bay, Gurnard Bay and Ryde following pollution. The government agency has warned against bathing and swimming in and around these coastal locations. The Isle of Wight Council advised people not to come into direct contact with contaminated water and keep children and animals out of the water. If you make contact with pollution, wash with soap and water, not hand sanitizer.
Death after a surgery in Turkey. The inquest into the death of a woman who died a day after having a tummy tuck and breast surgery in Turkey opened at the Isle of Wight Coroner's Court in Newport on Wednesday. Karen Squires, 65, of Jubilee Place in Ryde, died after undergoing a surgical procedure in Turkey on Tuesday, January the 13th. Court heard she became unwell shortly after the procedure and her condition deteriorated rapidly. She was pronounced dead the next day, on Wednesday, January the 14th. A post-mortem was carried out on Thursday, February the 5th, and a provisional cause of death was given as multiple organ failure, bilateral mastoplasty, abdominoplasty, a small intestinal and right colon, ischemia and portal hypertension due to advanced alcoholic liver cirrhosis. Coroner Caroline Soumeray adjourned the hearing and set a provisional full inquest date on Monday, December the 7th. NHS advice on having surgery abroad. The NHS has advice for those seeking surgery abroad. It says the standards and qualifications abroad might be different from the UK. It says to be cautious of websites selling cosmetic surgery as part of a holiday. It also says overseas clinics may not provide follow-up treatment or may not provide it up to the same standard as in the UK.
A list of victims of poison sold online by a Canadian national has been released and includes a man who died on the Isle of Wight. Michael Dunham, 38, was found dead at a hotel on the Isle of Wight on October the 13th, 2021. He is among 79 UK victims of poison brought online from Kenneth Law. Law, a Canadian national, sold lethal substances online to people across the world, including in the UK. The 60-year-old from Mississauga admitted 14 charges of aiding suicide when he appeared in court in Ontario on Friday, May the 29th. The National Crime Agency, abbreviated NCA, and the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, said 79 UK victims died as a direct result of purchasing Law's products. Craig Turner, Deputy Director Investigations at the National Crime Agency, said Kenneth Law believed he was untouchable in his criminal business, which exploited vulnerable people around the world at a time when they needed support the most. Instead, Law encouraged victims to take their own lives using items bought from him, attempting to cover his tracks with detailed instructions to avoid leading policing back to him and acting with arrogance when attempting to justify his actions. The NCA has worked diligently to investigate Law over the last 3 years, and following guilty pleas in his case in Canada, the NCA and the Crown Prosecution Service have made a joint decision for cases involving deaths in the UK to be included in Law's Canadian proceedings. This decision is only possible due to the strength of the NCA investigation, and the UK is the only country worldwide that has an investigation detailed and mature enough to be included in the Canadian prosecution. This means victims and families in the UK will see Law held accountable for the crimes he committed. We thank them for their continued support and patience throughout our investigation. Law is due to be sentenced in Canada later this year, where the judge will take into account the full extent of his criminal behaviour. Michael Dunham's sister, Holly Arne Voot has become an outspoken campaigner since her brother's death.
Pub closes as a victim of the crisis by Liam Chorley. A popular island pub has closed after becoming another victim of the current pub crisis. The Bugle Inn at Brading enjoyed one final day of trading last Sunday. The pub's owners, Daniel and Jasmine Ashley Walker, shared the news, explaining the financial pressures that led to their decision. They said, "As many of you will have already heard, it is with a heavy heart that we want to inform all our customers and the Bugle community that we have become another victim of the current pub crisis. In the past 2 years, many of the taxes we pay to the government have increased drastically. Our gas and electricity has increased by almost double. Cost of ingredients have increased, some by as much as quadruple. Wages have risen rapidly, and business rates have increased. Sadly, this has left us with a hard decision to make. And quite frankly, we do not want to start charging £8 for a pint of lager or £25 for a burger. So we have made the decision to leave the industry that we love and close the Bugle down. The decision would be so much easier if we were seeing no customers or seeing a large downturn in sales. However, we are as busy as ever. But sadly, the income just doesn't quite make enough for what's going out." The couple added, "We would like to thank all our customers who have supported our dream and ambition to bring the Bugle back to the busy heart of the community that it always was. In many ways, we feel we have achieved this. However, if the only way to succeed is to overcharge our loyal customers just to pay over 30% of our sales to the government, that's not our dream. We hope everyone understands, and we will miss seeing all of our regulars, whether you came to us for drinks, evenings out, theme nights, or our famous carvery. We are still looking for a new buyer to take on the pub and reopen it. We're hopeful the pub will not stay closed for long. The couple have run the Bugle for 5 years."
A care home has been found in breach of 6 legal regulations and told it must improve by a watchdog. The Care Quality Commission, CQC, rated Waxham House at 1 High Park Road in Ryde requires improvement across 5 categories: overall, safe, effective, responsive and well led, with another area, caring, deemed to be good. Breached regulations related to personal-centred care, consent to care and treatment, safe care and treatment, safeguarding, good governance and safe and effective staffing. Waxham House's specialisms and services, including caring for adults over 65 years and those with dementia and physical disabilities. A total of 20 people were living or staying on site at the time of the assessment. The home was sold at auction to first-time buyers Minal Patel and Mitten Kumar Patel of Genix Care Limited earlier this year. At the time, Mr. Patel said, "As we begin our journey into the care sector, we do so with excitement for what is to come." The CQC said the provider failed to effectively assess or manage environmental risks, including the risks of Legionella, and areas of the service had exposed hot pipes and electric heaters in use with no protective covers. The inspectors were told there were not always enough staff, and according to the watchdog, the provider failed to undertake recruitment checks in line with the regulatory requirements. The CQC said the provider did not always ensure all potential risks to people were understood and managed. People's records were not always up to date, complete, or contemporaneous. Medicines were not always managed safely. The provider failed to operate effective checks of care quality and safety. We have asked the provider for an action plan in response to concerns found at this assessment in relation to personal-centred care, need for consent, safeguarding, and safe and effective staffing. The provider was, however, praised for always treating people with kindness, empathy, and compassion. Inspectors said staff interactions were warm and genuine, with feedback from people supporting its observations. They also said the provider promoted people's independence so people knew their rights and had choice and control over their own care, treatment and well-being. Waxham House has been contacted for comment. Waxham House was brought to market after over 2 decades under husband and wife Sanjay and Sandhya Ramadani.
Abandoned dog numbers are a big cause for concern, by William Dalgleish. Abandoned dog numbers are on the rise on the Isle of Wight. Isle of Wight Council and RSPCA Isle of Wight have reported a growing problem on the island this spring, including the recent case of Rocky, an English bulldog, Staffordshire Bull Terrier, who was found tied to a tree in Bonchurch. Natasha Disk, Service Director for Waste Environment and Planning at the Council, said, "As dog owners, we take on a responsibility. We are custodians of the animals we bring into our homes, committing to care for them throughout their lives. No dog should ever be abandoned." The Council's Public Realm Officer team has dealt with 20 stray dogs over the past 12 months, 12 of which were abandoned and required rehoming. In the past 3 months alone, the RSPCA has supported 6 abandoned dogs. The Council and RSPCA are emphasising the importance of microchipping, not only because it is a legal requirement, but because it greatly increases the chances of reuniting lost pets with their owners. Ms. Dix said, "We're urging all dog owners to act responsibly by making sure their pets are microchipped and that contact details are kept up to date. It's a simple legal requirement, but more importantly, it's the quickest and most effective way to reunite lost dogs with their families safely." Recent cases include Imrani, a Pharaoh hound, found severely underweight and incredibly anxious, with help from the volunteer at Track a Dog and Drone SAR. Rodney, another unclaimed stray collected by the Council, also remains without a microchip. Steve Backhouse, Branch Director for the RSPCA, said, "News of another abandoned dog has sadly become all too familiar this year. Invariably, being abandoned takes its toll. It can take time and a lot of behaviour work to improve a dog's trust and reduce anxiety. Microchipping is required by law for all dog owners in England. Puppies must be microchipped and registered by 8 weeks old, and owners must keep their contact details updated. The RSPCA offers low-cost microchipping services and can help check if pet information is current on the national database."
Much-loved businessman, poet and LGBT activist Peter Woodnut has died. Peter was well known for running menswear shop Woodnuts on Union Street Ryde for several decades, retiring in 2007. Registered blind and dyslexic, the former businessman, who was in his mid-80s, was supported by charity Sight for White for a number of years. He started losing his eyesight when he was around 60 years old, and it meant he had to drop his favourite hobby of photography. After retiring, Peter went to look after his sister in Seaview, who was suffering with sciatica. During that time, he used the computer to start writing a few bits and pieces and found he had a talent. He told the county press, "I used to pen things before, but never seriously because I'm dyslexic. Thank God for spell checker. When I was young, dyslexia wasn't recognised." Peter made headlines in March 2022 when he wrote a poem about saving the environment. It was so emotive that when he shared it with a number of famous faces, he received responses from the then soon-to-be King Charles III, Queen Elizabeth II, and broadcaster David Attenborough. One of his poems, Silent Love, also featured in published book Out on an Island, which explored the Isle of Wight's hidden LGBTQ+ history. The book featured real-life stories from 17 LGBTQ+ people who shared honest and intimate accounts. Peter was also at both the 1952 and 2022 Royal Isle of Wight Royal Proclamations. In September 2022, dignitaries and well-wishers gathered for the official reading, marking the death of the Queen and arrival of the new King, Charles III. Peter was amongst those in attendance and shared his experience with the County Express. Out on an Island, contributor Anne Murray described Peter as a beautiful soul. She wrote, Peter did so much for the island and in particular Ryde. He was an amazing businessman, photographer and poet, never letting dyslexia or macular degeneration stop him. A very resilient and inspirational person. His poetry highlighted so many subjects close to the heart and brought comfort and joy to many. I remember Peter as a loving, kind man who was passionate about the world, who always took the time to talk to people with kindness and respect. Someone who had a smile that would light up a room and hugs for anyone who needed it. He will be greatly missed.
A teenager posed as a younger boy to target a girl of 13. A young man who posed as a 14-year-old boy on Snapchat to target a girl aged 13 has admitted a string of child sex offences and faces a possible jail term. Lucas Richards of Eddington Road, Nettlestone, appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, June the 6th. The 19-year-old admitted to attempting to engage in sexual communication with a child, attempting to cause a child aged 13 to 15 to view sexual imagery, and 5 counts of making indecent photographs of a child. The court heard the offences took place over a 5-day period between October the 20th and October the 25th, 24. Richards, who was already the focus of a police investigation, contacted the girl via Snapchat while pretending to be a 14-year-old boy, said Liz Miller, prosecuting. His profile picture showed only part of his face to disguise his true age. Messages sent by Richards quickly became sexual with him, telling the girl he would take her virginity. He also told her he was in bed thinking about her and sent her an explicit image of himself, plus a video of himself committing a lewd act. Richards went on to ask the girl to send him photographs, including one of her in a swimsuit. Police attended Richards' home on December the 15th, 24, where several digital devices were seized and examined. Analysis uncovered that Richards possessed indecent images of children across all three categories, including Category A, the most serious classification. These comprised 1 still image and 4 moving images. He also had 3 still and 2 moving images categorized as Category B, and 2 still and 1 moving image categorized as Category C. For Richards, who appeared with no previous convictions, Oscar Vincent said Richards had been affected by a number of personal factors. Magistrates ordered a pre-sentence report to consider all sentencing options, including custody. Richards was granted bail and will be sentenced at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on July the 17th.
A well-known bird rescue organisation has announced it will no longer respond to wild bird emergencies after years of round-the-clock volunteering took a toll on family life. The Isle of Wight Bird Rescue has told supporters it is stepping away from rescuing wild birds and will instead concentrate solely on domestic birds. In a statement shared on social media, Lorna Rickman and Nikki Marie Williams, who run the organisation, said the decision came after a lot of thought and many difficult conversations following years of putting birds before ourselves and even before our own families. They said they had been taking calls at all hours of the day and night, from calls at 4:15 a.m. to calls at 10 or 11 p.m, and that this had taken a huge toll on our family life and personal well-being. The statement continues, "We've missed quality time with loved ones because we were constantly taking calls or having to end conversations because another call was coming through." The pair also described the emotional and financial strain of driving across the island to injured birds, only to find the animal had already died and no one had contacted them to cancel. They said they had increased faced rudeness and unrealistic expectations, including being asked to remove dead birds from driveways and to magically climb dangerous heights to reach stranded birds, sometimes risking their own safety to try to help. "We are proud of everything we have achieved and all the birds we have helped over the years, and we have met some truly wonderful people along the way," Lorna and Nikki Marie added. "But now that there are more wildlife rescuers and organisations helping, we feel the time has come for us to step back. Thank you to everyone who has supported us, donated, volunteered, transported birds, shared posts and shown kindness throughout this journey. It has meant more than you know." Although the Isle of Wight Bird Rescue will no longer take on wild bird rescues, they stressed they are not disappearing completely and will continue their work with domestic birds.
Council to offload a historic property by Rufus Pickles. A historic Grade 2 listed property in the centre of Ryde is going to auction next month. Its owner, the Ryde Town Council, the RTC, has confirmed. Vectis Hall, a 19th century former school building on Melville Street in Ryde, was bought by the RTC for £125,000 in 2020, with the aim of bringing it back into community use, and could now be sold at a loss. Back in 2020, the Town Council said that due to the poor state of the hall, it will be a long-term project with hopes to start work within the next 3 to 5 years. On Tuesday, May the 26th, Chris Turvey, Planning Officer at RTC, told members of the public, Jenny Wade, that Vectis Hall will go to the next Clive Empson auction, which concludes on June the 17th. Clive Empson said Vectis Hall has a nil reserve, meaning it is guaranteed to sell to the highest bidder, regardless of how low the final bid is. A total of £16,922 was allocated for the building in RTC's 26-27 budget, compared to £46,880 in the 25-26 budget, £56,622 in the 24th-25th budget, £18,580 in the 23-24, £7,800 in the 22-23, and £23,600 in the 21-22. Rob Marchant, an auctioneer at Clive Empson, said that in recent times the hall has fallen into a state of disrepair and now requires a programme of significant upgrading and refurbishment. He said, built in 1812 and reputedly Ryde's first free school, the Vectis Hall has since gone on to be utilised in a number of different guises, including a community hall. Dance scenes from the 1973 classic British film That'll Be the Day, starring Ringo Starr and David Essex, were filmed in the main hall. The commercial property includes a former caretaker manager's flat. Mr. Marchant added, "It is considered the Vectis Hall could suit a wide range of future potential uses, subject to all necessary consents being obtainable."
An Isle of Wight ultra runner has been selected to represent England at a prestigious event in Northern Ireland this month. Terry Smith, a member of Vectis Academy running group, has been chosen to join the 40-strong race lineup from England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland at the Four Nations Backyard Ultra Championship. He joined the official running group Dark Star on the island before joining Vectis and has built a reputation for taking on endurance challenges. The backyard race at Florence Court near Enniskillen challenges athletes to complete a loop of just over 4 miles every hour on the hour until only one runner remains. Terry said, "I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to have been selected to represent England. It's a privilege to wear the England vest and compete alongside some of the best endurance runners in the world. Backyard ultras are a unique test of physical and mental resilience, and I'm looking forward to embracing the challenge and giving my very best for the team. I'm also incredibly grateful for the support I've received from family, friends, training partners and the local running community. The race is on June the 20th.
Rowers put in a strong showing at the regatta. 3 young athletes are making waves on the national stage. The Shanklin Sandown Rowing Club's juniors delivered standout performances at the National Schools Regatta held at Dorney Lake in Windsor. 15-year-old Connie Batley-Smith finished 11th in the U19 singles time trial and went on to secure 3rd place in the B final after a strong sprint in the final 500 metres. Club captain Gary Walters said this was a remarkable feat for all athletes, 2 of whom are just 15, to complete 3 years above and hold their own. Gary added, for Connie to gain a B final podium finish is extraordinary. Isaac King, 16, and Digby Ridgewell, 15, also competed in the Open Championship singles. Both qualified for the E final after outpacing more than 20 other rowers, finishing 2nd and 7th respectively. The Shanklin Sandown Rowing Club now turns its attention to hosting this weekend's Hanson Dorset Regatta. The focus will be shifting back to coastal racing. The club's next major target will be the British Rowing Club Championship set for July.
Sunshine, smiles and no lack of football skills set the scene as the White Eagles Ladies Academy hosted their first ever summer tournament at the Bay School, Sandown. More than 200 players and parents from both island and mainland teams turned out for Saturday's event, which marked another step forward following the club's recent move to Sandown. On the pitch, the hosts made the most of their home advantage, with White Eagles lifting the trophies in both the under-12 and under-14 competitions. The day delivered plenty of excitement, including 2 dramatic penalty shootouts, underlining the competitive standard across all age groups. Club chairman Mike Ross praised both the occasion and those who helped bring it together. We are immensely grateful to the Bay for helping us make it happen, Mike said. The standard of football was very good, and there were 2 penalty shootouts to add to the excitement. This was a great showcase for girls' football on the island. Mike also paid tribute to the efforts behind the scenes, with the club's outgoing secretary Scott Ronan and his partner Sean playing key roles in organising the tournament. They pulled out all the stops and organised the event superbly, he added. We hope this can become an annual feature of island football. The day was such a success.
The 1939 vintage yacht is an overall winner. A classic yacht built in 1939 has been crowned the overall winner of the Cowes Spring Classics. Hooper, a one-off design by Lauren Giles and helmed by Giovanni Belgrano, took the top title after a strong and consistent performance over the weekend-long regatta, which celebrates vintage yachts and traditional sailing on the Solent. The event, hosted in Cowes by Mary Scott Jackson of MSJ Events and Martin Knott, featured a full programme of racing organised by the Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club. The organising team said, Cowes Spring Classics continue to showcase the very best of classic yacht racing, combining of beautiful boats, competitive sailing and a fantastic social atmosphere both on and off the water. Hooper also won Class 1 and took home the award for the highest placed MBCYC member. Second place in Class 1 went to Scherzo of Cowes, a 1968 Sparkman, and Stephen Swan 36 sailed by Peter Morton, while Jason Fry's Njord, a 1918 8-metre first rule yacht, placed third. Class 2 was won by Suvretta, a 1924 West Solent One design skippered by Will van Dyke. The 2027 Cowes Spring Classics will take place from May the 21st to 23. And now the heritage. 125 years ago, in June 1901, a child was saved from drowning at Bembridge after falling and getting caught in seaweed under the pontoon bridge. The Ventnor Town Council was optimistic of a tourist boom after the opening of an express train service between Ventnor and Waterloo via Cowes and Southampton. The Solent Tunnel Bill was passed at the House of Commons and passed to the House of Lords for a second reading.
100 years ago, in June 1926, the Newport Rotary Club said it was supporting plans to establish a Central District Association for the Isle of Wight Scouts. Parkhurst Prison Governor Captain R. Hughes Diath retired after 11 years in the post. East Wight churches were £101,300 short of their target towards the Winchester Diocesan Fund, while West Wight was £282 short of theirs. A car crashed into a ditch at Palmer's Road, Newport, after a horse with a cart bolted in front of the driver.
75 years ago, in June 1951, the Southern Electricity Board rejected calls for additional heating apparatus in the male geriatric ward at St Mary's Hospital. St Mary's Hospital's House Committee made a recommendation to the Regional Hospital Board to approve a scheme to build a £12,000 nurses' home. The County Council said a government grant was available to purchase toll road rights in Bembridge.
50 years ago, in June 1976, Earl Mountbatten opened the Totland Bay Youth Hostel. Radio Hams, based at St Boniface Down, Ventnor, held a competition for amateur radio enthusiasts to establish as many communications with amateur stations as possible within a 24-hour period. A Cowes couple won a trip on the inaugural flight of Concorde to Washington after entering a prize draw. After a case of rabies was brought to the mainland from France, West Wight parish councils joined forces in calls to exterminate foxes on the island, said to be a high-risk carrier of the killer disease.
A heritage steamship on a special cruise. A heritage steamship is preparing to sail on a special river cruise this weekend. The SS Shieldhall will depart on a journey up the River Medina tomorrow, that's Saturday. The volunteer crew will lead a 4.5-hour cruise starting from Southampton Water, where passengers will pass close to cruise ships including Celebrity Apex, Iona, MSC Virtuosa, Oceania Insignia and Seven Seas Grandeur. Neil Philpott, the ticket manager, said, "We're looking forward to a full June sailing programme. It was great to see Shieldhall back in steam over the weekend of May the 23rd to see the Shieldhall involved with exercises with the Solent Rescue, Hamble Lifeboat and National Coast Watch Institution. We're now set for another very busy weekend where we will be highlighting the wonders of the north shore of the Isle of Wight and the Solent." After reaching the Solent, Shieldhall will travel east to Norris Castle and Osborne House before entering the lower stretches of the Medina River, passing historic warehouses and wharfs. Guests will be welcomed on board from the Cowes Hammerhead Crane Trust, who will give an entertaining insight into the Medina views. Details of the sailings and tickets for trips are available at www.ss-shield-hall.co.uk or through telephone 023 1550242.
On this day, in 1975, in Britain's first referendum, a large majority voted to stay in the common market. More than 17 million voted yes, and almost 8.5 million voted no. In history, English missionary Boniface and 53 companions were murdered in Germany by unbelievers. In 1916, Lord Kitchener, British general and conqueror of the Sudan, was lost at sea when his ship HMS Hampshire struck a mine off Orkney en route to Russia. In 1944, the Café Gondry was the first place to be liberated from the Germans on the eve of the D-Day landings, when paratroopers from the 6th Brigade dropped on the town of Benneville to seize the vital canal bridge. In 1947, US Secretary of State George Mitchell announced the Marshall Plan to help Europe recover from near bankruptcy following the war. In 1963, War Minister John Profumo resigned, admitting he misled the House of Commons about his relationship with Christine Keeler. In 1967, the Six-Day War began between Israel and Egypt. In 1968, Robert Kennedy, American senator and younger brother of the late President John F. Kennedy, was shot in the Hotel Ambassador in Los Angeles by a Jordanian Arab, Sirhan Bishari, and died the following day. In 1975, Egyptian President Sadat reopened the Suez Canal to all but Israeli shipping after 8 years of closure.
Gunner shot dead at station by Alan Stroud. On the evening of November the 19th, 1942, 23-year-old gunner Peter McHenry of the Royal Artillery, based either at Bembridge Fort or Culver, was shot and killed on the road outside Brading railway station. The coroner later stated the poor man had been wantonly shot. Peter McHenry had a record. He had served 56 days of detention at Gibraltar for reasons unknown, and 2 shorter periods for being absent without leave. Now he had escaped from close arrest for removing a newspaper from the restroom and committing an assault on a comrade on duty. A search party of 4 gunners armed with rifles was detailed by Sergeant Rogers, who told them not to open fire. Rogers had been told McHenry was carrying a dangerous weapon, a Spanish knife, which was shown in court. Rogers told the inquest, "While we were searching the carriages, I heard one of the escorts call out, 'Halt! Is that you, McHenry?' And McHenry replied, 'Yes.' I heard a shot about 2 seconds later. I made for the station entrance and heard more shots behind me. When the first of 7 shots were fired, I thought one of the men had got excited and fired accidentally. I did not know the deceased well personally, but considered he would be dangerous to the escort while on duty." Gunner Charles Eggleton challenged him 3 times, "Halt, McHenry, or I'll fire." After the 3rd challenge, he fired low. But the coroner, "Did it occur to you that there might be other people on the station in the darkness?" "Yes, I took that into consideration." He heard McHenry running away and fired 2 rounds into the road and ran into the road shouting, "Where are you, McHenry?" He heard him say, "Up here, I've been hit in the back." He found him lying in a prone position about 45 yards away and his left hand was near a knife which was partly drawn from the scabbard. Witnesses applied a field dressing to a jagged wound on his back. When he fired, he had no intention of hitting the deceased, but Mr. Dammont, his reason for firing was to frighten the deceased and bring him out of cover.
Gunner Albert Perry said he fired 3 shots from the platform to the left of the figure he saw running up the road. McHenry was bent double when he saw him. By the coroner, he did not challenge but fired. Walter Dockett, a railway guard by the coroner, he heard shots fired. He agreed it was lucky there were not many people about. Captain Barrett said under King's regulations there was no justification for the use of rifles on that occasion. They should only be used if violence was offered to the escort. Dr. William Grove, house surgeon at the county hospital, said deceased had a gunshot wound through the thorax and kidney region and died as a result of shock. In summing up, the coroner asked the jury to take careful note of the statement regarding the use of firearms when prisoner broke arrest. It was a very serious matter and, in his view, the poor man had been wantonly shot. In the excitement of the moment, the men completely lost their heads and fired their rifles in a most dangerous manner. It was only by luck there were no passengers on the station or people coming down the road to join the train. They simply blasted away in a public place like a railway station. He was not satisfied that Sergeant Rogers had exercised all the care that he might have done, and said the jury should consider whether they thought a charge of manslaughter might not be preferred against him and the men. The jury returned a verdict of misadventure and added a pointed rider, "We consider that the orders given by Sergeant Rogers were inadequate, and it appeared to us that there was a definite lack of supervision during the time the deceased was under close arrest." They also expressed sympathy with McHenry's relatives. Peter McHenry's body was not returned to his hometown of Hazelmere. He lies buried in the Forest Road military ceremony, his headstone simply recording his dates. The Army Roll of Honour, 1939 to 1945, carefully states only that he died during World War II military service, and an army veil has been drawn over his service record in the National Archives. It is beyond reach, being marked closed until January 2035.
The gardening section. How to make the most of shady spots as the temperatures soar. With the recent heat wave, people will have been heading for much needed shady spots in their gardens under the canopies of trees, sun umbrellas or awnings. This is where north-facing gardens come into their own, and not just for shade, but for beauty too, as they can accommodate a surprising number of shade-tolerant plants. Sometimes the light is bright enough to have a massive repertoire of plants, says Lynn Moore of More and More Plants, specialist in shade-tolerant and woodland plants, which recently won its 5th consecutive gold medal at the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. You can have a south-facing garden, but if you've got high walls either side of it and trees, you could have lower light levels because of its surrounds, she points out. The assumption is that if you have a north-facing garden, it doesn't get the sun, so therefore it's shaded and you can't do anything with it. People don't consider how the light levels change hour by hour, day to day. She offers the following tips to those who want to make the most of their shady spots. Consider light levels. Is it full shade or partial shade? Partial shade gets some sun, normally early morning or late afternoon, and for the hottest part of the day it goes into shade. Full shade is where 90% of the time it doesn't have any sun at all. Know your soil. The type of soil you have will determine what shade-tolerant plants will grow in it. We've got sandy soil, so it's quite free draining, and we grow hardy geraniums, various grasses, Alchemilla mollis, and lots of other plants. Choose the right plant for the right place. There are lots of shade-loving plants that flower, but a lot of woodland plants which are genetically programmed to do their thing depending on the tree canopy. A lot of woodland plants flower in the spring before the tree canopy closes in over the top and the leaves expand fully, and again in autumn as the leaves are falling and that canopy is breaking down. For areas with low light levels, you may be more dependent on woodland plants, and your peak flowering is going to be spring and autumn. Hardy geraniums may fall into that category, along with epimediums, which flower prolifically in spring, Brunnera, and all the various cultivars, lots of pulmonaria. A lot of spring flowers will have a repeat flush in the autumn. Those with clay soil or soil which retains moisture may need to choose a different palette of plants, such as hostas, particularly those with blue leaf varieties which are better in low light levels. Think about the foliage. The leaves are important because they're going to add interest through different textures and colours. Add colour with hostas, which throw up spikes of purple flowers above exotic, lush-looking leaves, but green is a cooling, calming colour. Choose colours carefully. Colours can create moods, and if you are able to grow a larger variety of plants in a semi-shaded garden and want a restful space, go for pale hues rather than a barrage of bright colours. Make the most of the sunsets. Many north-facing gardens have sun in the late afternoon and early evening. So if you want to make the most of the sunset, place furniture where the light falls at the end of the day.
Andy Butler from the Isle of Wight Natural History and Archaeological Society tells us the status of the large tortoiseshell Nymphalis polychlorus here on the Isle of Wight and on the mainland is probably best described as puzzling. They have in the past had short spells of abundance that were then followed by long periods of scarcity, and there would appear to be no definable reason for this. The islander head Herbert F. Poole, writing in 1909, said that the butterfly was not common but distributed all over the island. Since then, it has declined with only sporadic sightings, some of which were in more recent times from butterflies reared from continental stock and released here in an attempt to reinstate the species. This is a woodland butterfly, with the adults on the wing in June, July and occasionally August. It then hibernates in sheds or holes in old trees and emerges in February. By late March or early April, they've mated, and the females then fly through the treetops looking for the right ones on which to lay their large clusters of eggs. Elm, sallow and willow are preferred, and it is significant that the very obvious silken webs that the caterpillars live in have not been found and recorded anywhere in recent years. It may, of course, be that they have just been missed, as nobody has been specifically looking for them. Modern authors, when writing about the large tortoiseshell, tend to dismiss any sightings as being releases and not genuinely wild, but this is certainly a mistake. Looking at the past 25 years, there have been consistent reports of the butterfly being seen in southern coastal areas of the Isle of Wight, and even observed from a boat heading for land, Bonchurch, to be precise, in 2005. These sightings usually coincide with large movements of other insects such as hoverflies, as well as butterflies that then move on inland. Seaside gardens have attracted a number over the years, such as one seen in a garden in Wheelers Bay that stayed for a while before hibernating and emerging to be seen briefly the following February in 2007. In fact, there are sightings most years of incoming migrants with unknown numbers that are missed. This year, 2026, there have been numerous reports of possible hibernating large tortoiseshells emerging in woodland in Newtown and Parkhurst early in the year, so it would be interesting to see if there are corresponding sightings of the adult butterfly in June or July, giving an indication that they have perhaps bred here. Let's hope so.
What's on? Wednesday the 10th. Sandown and Shanklin Military Band at 8 p.m. An evening concert at Rylstone Gardens, 11 Popham Road, Shanklin. If you want information, it's all in lower casing here. I'll spell it out for you. RYLSTONEBANDSTAND at gmail.com. That was Rylstone Bandstand at gmail.com.
On Saturday the 13th of June, it's Shorewell Midsummer Fair. It takes place at 1:30 and costs £3. Shorewell Midsummer Fair, Wolverton Manor, Newport.
And on Sunday the 7th of June, Irish sessions at 2 p.m. Join us in the Key Arts Cafe for a wonderful session of Irish music at Key Arts, 15 C Street, Newport. And information is info@quearts.org.
On Saturday the 13th, live music with JC and Angelina at 7:30 p.m. Live music at Goddard's Brewery. Blues, jazz, folk and originals in a relaxed Isle of Wight setting, which is at Goddard's Brewery Limited, Brandstone. There is a telephone number 01983 611 011.
Our last section is the letters. How I Found Another Dylan on the Island by Pat Orthen from Southampton. Once upon a time there was a young hippie called Patsy Orthen, aged 20. I visited the Isle of Wight from Southampton in 1969 to see my idol Bob Dylan, who was topping the bill at the second Isle of Wight festival. It was Dylan's first big gig since his bad motorcycle accident in 1966, and there were loads of great bands there also, including the band The Who, The Nice, Family, Marsha Hunt, Blodwyn Pig, and loads more. Recently, I wanted to revisit the grounds that seemed to map my life for the next almost 70 years. It was a life-changing experience which ignited my love of live music, and I am still a huge fan of Bob Dylan and go to live gigs often. While revisiting, I went to the Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary, and while talking to Emma, I was told there was a donkey named Dylan. So without hesitation, I felt compelled to adopt him. Now I have good reason to come back to the island. I can now tell people I'm going to see Dylan on the Isle of Wight. It was only £2 to £3 for a ticket to the festival in 1969, and now it costs hundreds. I would love to go to a festival one more time, but it's free to see Dylan, my adopted donkey, any time I want. See a photo of Pat at the 1969 festival at countypress.co.uk.
Andrew Green of Shanklin has sent a copy to both Ireland MPs headed "Failure at the Top." It goes, "I write to you regarding the murder of Henry Novak and the incompetence of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. I have never been moved by such a tragic incident and then felt the need to express my thoughts with any MP. My heart and prayers go out to the Novak family on the loss of their cherished son. What I ask is that you both request the immediate resignation of the Constabulary Chief Constable and Police and Crime Commissioner. The reality of such tragedies is always a failure of leadership and not the actions of a few rogue individuals. Like Henry, my son is of Polish descent and is in his first year of university. This incident could easily have happened on the Isle of Wight. There needs to be a root and branch change within the constabulary, and that change needs to start at the top."
This is goodbye from Val.
And this is goodbye from Tony.
BBC In Touch. The programme follows, and the Scaffolding and Skips news follows that.
Hello. Later today, and following on from last week's audio description special, news of a consultation on what we should be able to expect from streaming services. But first, another service which listeners have pressed us to investigate over the past couple of years, Access to Work. The government programme designed to support disabled people to get into work and then stay there is trumpeting the fact that it's taking on almost 500 new staff to cope with long delays in dealing with applications to get onto the scheme and in the slow payments of grants to pay your support workers once you're there. Well, those are certainly amongst the deep concerns about access to work that you've brought to our attention, but by no means the only ones. So, to find out what is going on, I'm joined by Minister for Social Security and Disability, Sir Stephen Timms. Stephen, let's start with what looks like the good news. Tell me about these new recruits. What's their role?
Well, Access to Work is a vital scheme doing a really important job. Demand for it has surged. It's more than doubled since before the pandemic, and the department has struggled with processing all of the applications, and we inherited a big backlog with Access to Work at the time of the election. Now, at the election, there were 500 people working on Access to Work. We've increased that already by 150. What we've now announced, as you've said, is we're going to recruit and train up a further 500 people, and that will enable us, we're confident, to eliminate the backlog by September next year. It won't happen overnight, but we will be able to get rid of it by September next year.
So they're not actually in place at the moment?
No, recruitment has begun, but once people have been recruited, there's quite a lengthy training programme that's needed because Access to Work is quite a complicated scheme, so it'll take a while before everybody's fully up to speed.
But the DWP claims that they've already eliminated payment delays and have cleared 96% of urgent cases. So what will those new recruits do now? Look for new ways of saving money from the system?
No, there are at the moment many people who are waiting a long time for their Access to Work claim to be determined. It is true that we've always prioritised people who are starting a new job within the next 4 weeks. And that's the statistic you've quoted there. We've done a reasonable job for them. But there are some people, I'm afraid, who are waiting a year at the moment for their access to work claim to be resolved. And that's the backlog that we are now determined to clear and stop these unacceptably long waits that far too many people have had to put up with.
Now, as you know, because we've talked to you about this before, people have also complained about cuts to various things, the number of hours of support that some of them are entitled to, cuts to the amounts that they can pay their support workers. In other words, all apparently aimed at cutting the access to work budget and putting the onus, or some of it, onto would-be employers. Is that what these people have really been brought in to do?
No, it's not. I mean, it is true that as demand has increased, particularly with the greater volume of applications related to mental ill health, some of the guidance that the department has had was being applied inconsistently in the past. And we now ensured that the guidance is being applied consistently, and that does mean that some previous awards have not been renewed. But the guidance hasn't been changed at all. It's just the consistency of applying it has been tightened up.
I mean, you've always said that the guidance hasn't been changed, but, you know, we continue to hear about people who are having the kind of experiences that I've just mentioned.
Yes, and it is, I think, because of this more consistent application. But we are going to be coming forward with reforms to access to work later on this year. We've been consulting on this. We're looking very carefully at a recent report from the National Audit Office about access to work. And the truth is, this programme does need to support many more people than it did in the past. And we've got to reform it so it's up to the job which now needs doing.
Just to ask you a bit more about these new recruits. Are they new recruits or have they come from other government departments?
No, they're being recruited from afresh. I mean, people possibly doing other jobs somewhere else may well be applying for them, but they're not being kind of seconded in or anything like that. And the other point I should make about them is that they are permanent jobs. They're not temporary jobs.
That was my next question.
Yeah. So I think, you know, once the backlog has been resolved, then some of them may go on to do other things within the DWP.
Like look for cuts.
No, absolutely not. There are lots of other things that need doing in our department, but they're not temporary jobs that we're recruiting for.
People are also complaining to us, visually impaired people in particular, about a lot of inconsistency in the rules. A classic one that we've heard from several people who've been told that correspondence now has to be either by post or on the phone. No emails, yet emails are a far easier way to do this for visually impaired people, certainly, than post or phoning, given how long you have to wait to get through to access to work quite frequently.
Well, the reason that we're not taking in information by email anymore is because of security concerns, privacy concerns. There was a real worry that people were sending in very personal data in a rather insecure way. However, Access to Work is developing the facility to upload documents digitally, and then hopefully we will overcome the difficulty that there is there. I should also say I'm very hopeful that the time you have to wait for your phone call to be answered is going to be significantly reduced by the end of July. I'm assured that will take place, and I think there'll be improvements there.
Sir Stephen Timms, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, the positive reaction to last week's special, where listeners discussed favourite audio described programmes, both on mainstream TV and on-demand streaming services, gave an indication of just how widely used AD is becoming, but also how much more visually impaired people actually want, both in terms of content and standards.
It varies from platform to platform. There's no real consistency about it. They have like pages saying what the audio described shows are, but the links to those pages tend to be very well buried sometimes. So sometimes you have to click on a show and just see if it's got it or not.
What I love about Netflix and Prime and the iPlayer is that with a lot of the programs, you can turn it on within the program once you've started watching it, which I think is really good because it gives you that flexibility.
10% is a ridiculously low number. I think my only concern about increasing it would be if they go on the cheap and do it using AI and computer speech. Because it's not necessarily as nuanced as a human voice.
The views of Glenn Turner and Nia Greer. So it's encouraging news that the UK communications regulator Ofcom is for the first time introducing requirements for streaming services like Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus and Netflix to adhere to, not only for audio description but also for subtitling and signing. And they're now holding a consultation on these proposals. I'm joined by Cathy Taylor, who's part of Ofcom's broadcasting team. Cathy, first of all, let's start with what these proposals are, specifically the most widely used access service by visually impaired people, audio description.
There are a number of different proposals which we've set out in our code. Some of them are legal requirements around things like quotas. So there's a 2-year quota ramping up to a 4-year quota of 10% of programme hours should be accompanied by audio description. Although we're proposing earlier interim quotas to make sure that streamers have to start providing access services as soon as possible. There are other requirements that I think are just as important actually as the quotas around making people aware of the features that are available. And we've said in our code that the requirement should be that you tell your audiences which programmes carry audio description. And then finally, there are requirements around reporting to Ofcom every year, not just on how much audio description you provided, but also on how good it is, what its quality is like, and how usable it is. That includes things like, can you switch it on and off easily?
So how is it that you can introduce these requirements now? I mean, there's been a call for them for some time.
That's a very fair question, because I know I was on this programme nearly 5 years ago talking about the same topic.
Oh, you were?
So it has been a while coming. I mean, what has changed is that government has found a really, I think, useful way to introduce these requirements via the Media Act, which came out in 2024. They have now specified which services the requirements will apply to, and that means that we can push ahead with getting this code out there and consulting on whether it works for people who actually use audio description.
You'll be aware that most users are still deeply dissatisfied with these percentages. At 10%, not coming anywhere near the requirements for TV services in the UK, which visually impaired people don't feel are anywhere near high enough.
It is actually the same as the broadcast requirements. It's just that some of the broadcasters have made a voluntary commitment to a higher target of 20%. I absolutely get that it seems like a relatively low percentage. It is set out in the law. There's nothing Ofcom can do in our code to change that, but we do see it as an absolute minimum, and we always encourage on-demand providers and broadcasters to do as much as they can. I think it's worth pointing out that some of the big streamers already are doing quite a lot more, even with no requirement. So in our latest data, which we published last week, Channel 4 is doing up to 46% AD on some platforms. Disney Plus is doing 30%. So we're seeing larger numbers than 10%. You're not seeing it on all of the other big global streamers at the moment, it's true, which is why we need the regulations. But I think there's an extent to which once people start to have to do this, they really start to take it seriously. And that's what we want. I think, again, your user from last week talking about, what you don't want is a high quota that people try to fill with cheap audio description that doesn't really do the job. What you want is really properly people to engage with it as part of the programme, thinking about whether sometimes something other than AD might make the programme more accessible. If it's really dialogue heavy, say, you could script that in much earlier to describe visual elements and not have to sort of artificially squeeze in another voice.
Now, you're empowered to introduce these requirements under the Media Act, but how easily can they actually be enforced, especially, for companies like Netflix, which is based outside the UK?
Well, the Media Act for the first time gives us the ability to enforce against these companies that are not UK based. There are a number of requirements that are set out very clearly. If they don't meet the targets, we will be enforcing against them.
So finally, Kathy, just tell us how people can respond to your consultation, and are there alternatives to doing it online?
Yes, there's a number of different ways that people can respond, including filling in a form online, emailing us. You could phone us and give us your views. We're very happy to receive responses in whatever form people can give them. I think the easiest way to get in touch with us is via our email address. It is tier1accessibility@ofcom.org.uk, and that's tier 1 with the number 1.
Kathy Taylor, thank you very much. And as well as the email address, we will also include other details of how to respond to Ofcom's consultation on our website. That's it for today. All reactions to what you hear on the programme are welcome. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk or leave your voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing the 1st of June 2026. Newport area, 62 St James Street. Roach Pittis, 60 to 66 Ludley Street. 39 Clifford Street.
The Ryde area, 141 High Street. The Heron Union Street, 77 George Street. Morrison's Daily, Union Street. 53 Union Street. 5 Union Street.
Cowes and East Cowes area, 29 Cross Street. The Parade, Public Toilets, Bath Road. Eramew Court, Bridge Road.
The Ventnor area, Ventnor Youth Centre, Victoria Street. The Rose Inn, Piers Street.
Sandown area, 1 Melville Street. 27 High Street.
The Yarmouth area, Omdurman, South Street.
Alveston area, Alveston Farmhouse Main Road.
Brading, Old Town Hall, High Street.
Seaview, opposite the Seaview Beach Hotel.